Wednesday. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm going to try to do this lecture. It's fun. I love it. It's fascinating. And then the rest of the day, I'll be building a giant swing set, play set for my daughters. I'll be out in the cold for hours. All right, that's just me. I hope you're all doing well out there too. As always, send me an email if you got questions about things. It's always good to hear from you guys as well, and girls. All right. All right. So, topic today is going to be Watergate, crazy scandal that rocked the Nixon presidency. All right, I'll walk you through it. All right, get rid of these. All right, 1972 election. So Nixon's been the president the last 4 years, from 68 to 72. It's an election year, election cycle, and Nixon's going to do whatever he can to get reelected, albeit criminal. All right. So the first question is, what success does Nixon have going in his 72 election? He's got a lot. I mean, he's coming off that visit to Moscow. He's coming off a visit to China. Economically, not so good, but he's had some major successes. So he's a shoo-in basically for his second term as the president. All right. Nixon wants to win at all costs. And what he has a group of loyal aides, people who are kind of on or off the books technically, and they'll do anything possible to help him win, albeit criminal. All right, so we covered it yesterday, but Nixon has a list of people. He actually has an enemies list, and these were people he viewed as unsympathetic to him or disloyal to America. And what Nixon used, he used all the power of the U.S. government to enhance his own personal agenda. So he used the IRS to audit people. That's not a fun process. The CIA, the FBI, he weaponized them in his campaign against his political enemies. Some of the people on the bottom here, you've got Jane Fonda. She was an actress for Hollywood. She was supportive of North Vietnam, of all things. So he hated her for probably pretty decent reasons there. She's supporting North Vietnam, which is going against America. Good reason. This is Steve McQueen, who's a movie star in the 1970s. I don't know why I put a picture of myself on there. Oh man, look at that younger Blaine. Wow. But this was a group of people he could not stand. He had a massive list of enemies against himself personally. All right. So here is a release document from this is after the fallout from here. This is the letter that calls Nixon to go after different people. This is used as evidence against himself later on. So dealing with political enemies, it's obviously confidential. And this was a letter spelling out who is he going to target, how are they going to go after them, and so on. This comes to light afterwards. All right. So what Nixon did, he was a law and order president, not the show, but law and order. That's what he wanted. He wanted America to be a country of rules. But he himself was willing to take illegal action in order for him to still be the president, to enforce law and order, which is kind of hypocritical to say the least. So he installed wiretaps on his own staff and several reporters. Wiretaps would basically be the equivalent of, imagine an old-fashioned landline, and you could pick it up and you could hear what people are talking about. Wiretaps go inside the phone. It basically opens up a third-party extension that can hear into the conversation of two people, and the two other people don't know that someone else is listening. These are installed throughout different areas. Even reporters, so if reporters were there in the White House, they've had a daily briefing, and the reporters were going to submit their news story. Back in the day, before you had the internet, they had to call in their work. They type it up. They could call in with the piece they're going to work on. And when they called over the phone, Nixon knew what the story was going to be, albeit positive or negative. He already knew. And even his own staff, there's a certain level of paranoia. He wanted to know what his own staff was saying about him. So the White House phones were tapped, his own secret tapes. And so imagine inside the Oval Office of Presidency, he's got a tape recorder and he's recording conversations happening. People have argued about why he was doing this. Some people suggest it's his own personal record. He wanted to know, he wanted to remember. Some people are saying he's using it to get dirt on people when you're being recorded without your own knowledge. It can be used against you as a weapon, but that's what he was doing. All right. But the big target he wants, since he's a Republican in 1972, he's running against the Democrats. And the Democrats, he wants to know what they're talking about, what their plan is going to be against him. So he wanted to tap the Democrats' phones at their headquarters in this new hotel called the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. That's why Watergate, that is the hotel that Nixon's going to order people to break into to tap the wires. All right. So, and you see, even here at the bottom, it's still a part of American political psyche today. Here's Trump's tweet: "How long has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very scary election process?" This is Nixon Watergate. Bad, sick guy. So even modern politicians are still talking about this idea of spying on each other for political gain. All right. Yeah, not really. All right. So Watergate, what it was, it's a hotel. It's a brand new hotel. And what the Democrat Party had done, they had leased out different floors in the Watergate complex, and that's where their political party was kind of gathering information and coordinating their election process for 72. Nixon wants to get in to steal files. He wants to wiretap the phones himself, so we could hear what the Democrats are planning against him in 72. All right, so Nixon okays the plan for men to break into the hotel and tap the phones and grab whatever else they could, documents, photographs. It's illegal. You can't break into someone's home or property, and that's what Nixon is doing. All right. So what he did, in order to break into a place, you have to have a certain skill level and ability, skill set. So he found former FBI and CIA agents. Former is critical because they're not connected to the FBI and the CIA at the moment. So if they get caught doing something, there's some deniability. There's not a connection to the president, but nonetheless, 5 former FBI and CIA agents, very skilled, and they're going to try to go in and wiretap Watergate. So they book a room in a hotel. They plan to break in. And so when they book the hotel, they're doing intelligence. They're doing research. Who's coming, who's leaving, what's the security like for the Democratic offices. And that's what they're doing. They did tap 2 phones. 2 of the phones were tapped. So Nixon can listen in, but there's a problem with the device itself. And that's going to be part of the unraveling of the presidency. All right. So when this happened, they're doing it in May in 1972. And since this is an election year, it's pretty easy to know. We're talking May, you got June, July, August, September, October, November elections. So it's only a few months away. So any last bit of information and dirt he can get against his rival in 72, Nixon will take it. So look at the time frame here. Here's June 17th, 1972, 5 months before the presidential elections. We've gone from May to June. Yeah. So they were called the plumbers. I don't know. They're called the plumbers. They're the former FBI and CIA agents. They get a call to go back into the hotel again. They've already tapped 2 phones in May, and now they get a message to go back in June. And the reason why they're being asked to go, one of the actual wiretaps is not working. All right. So they're tasked to go back, fix the wiretap to get the information. And this is the one where they get caught. All right. So the story is pretty simple. A security guard is doing his job as security guard. He's walking around the facility, and it's the middle of the night, and he's making his rounds. And there's a area where you have the underground storage, where the cars are, the garage, where you go into the actual hotel. And he's walking around. And he notices there's a piece of tape, and the piece of tape is basically pushing the latch of the door in. And by having the latch of the door pushed in, the door won't lock. So he thinks it's a cleaning crew that had put tape on there to not be locked in and out, not to be locked out of the hotel as they're going in to clean it. So at midnight, he takes his tape and he rips it off. He takes it off the latch so the door locks. He doesn't call in the police. So 2 hours later, he's doing the same exact thing again. He goes back to the same spot, and he notices there's also tape on the door for a second time, making the latch not work, the lock not work. So at that point, he takes it off then, and then he calls the Washington, D.C. police because he believes there's actually a break-in. And the D.C. police show up, and they find 5 men inside the Democratic National Convention, and they're caught red-handed. And these guys are former FBI, former CIA, and because they're caught, they don't want to give up who sent them. That is their main goal. And this is where it's going to slowly start to unravel for the president. 5 guys have been caught. They've been told by the president himself. No one knows this, but they've been told by the president to go break in, and they've got to try to create a web of lies so it doesn't lead to the presidency. So here's some actual devices they took. This was crazy. So they modified chapstick and they made it into microphones to talk to each other. That's wild technology. All right. So as they're like putting chapstick on their lips. They're actually talking to each other and coordinating. This is some stuff the police got off of the guys who were captured. Here is a picture inside, and you see here these guys are trying to use this device to break and smash into the old-fashioned filing cabinet and try to extract information from the Democrats. And they find this device on this. All right. So all these plumbers here on the bottom, they're all booked and charged with attempted burglary and attempted interception of telephones and other communications. So these 5 guys, they're all former FBI or CIA. All right. So here's a news article from the Washington Post a few days after the actual break-in. Remember, this is no connection to Nixon. No one knows Nixon Senate. These are just 5 guys who broke in. There's no connection. So, in addition, police found lock pins and door jimmies, almost $2,300 in cash. Most of it is in $100 bills with a serial number and sequence. That's weird. That perfect sequence of bills. A shortwave receiver that could pick up police calls, 40 rolls of unexposed film, 2 35-millimeter cameras, and 3 pen-sized tear gas guns. So these guys were, this is not a typical, these are not typical burglars. These guys who are highly trained. That is crazy. All right. So they're caught and no one is really putting the pieces together yet. All right. So the White House press briefing the next day. Here's the White House press secretary, Ron Ziegler, described the incident as a third-rate burglary. People are asked about this, and he's doing his best to make sure that people don't know that President Nixon is behind this. Maybe he didn't even know himself, but he dismissed it, third-rate burglary. It's really no one catches up on it. White House press briefings, they are pretty memorable in recent years. You got these 2 individuals. There's actually been even more, but all right. So in Forrest Gump, there's a scene you can watch it yourself. That's where Forrest Gump's in a hotel, and there's a bunch of guys with flashlights, and Forrest Gump calls the police because he can't sleep. That is the reference to those guys being caught, the plumbers being caught. All right. So you fast forward October. All right. We're 1 month before Election Day, and you've got these 2 now very famous reporters who are really working this break-in. 2 reporters, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein from the Washington Post. They're tracking down sources. They break the story, and they're able to piece together through bits and pieces and connections that Nixon, the president of the United States, was actually behind this break-in. All right. So while they're doing this on the surface, they've got a bombshell report that the president potentially is linked up with this illegal activity. He's the one sanctioning it. But behind the scenes, Nixon's doing everything to try to derail this investigation leading to him. So he ordered the FBI. So behind the scenes, the FBI was investigating the crime as well. So the FBI is also looking into it, but Nixon's going to use the CIA to stop the FBI from looking into what actually happened. All right. So Nixon's staff is in panic mode. They're trying to destroy any kind of evidence possible. Anyone who might potentially know or could be used against him to be used in a court or testify against him, they're firing them. They're paying them off. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were given to aides to hide the truth, disappear. But they're doing all of this because they've been caught, and now they're trying to hide this lie. Yeah, and Nixon himself used the CIA to disrupt the efforts of the FBI, who's investigating what these guys are actually doing, why their former workers are breaking into the Democratic Party, right? So the image you see here is what's going to become big is the tapes, Nixon's tapes in the Oval Office. Remember, he's recording everything, and people are suggesting that he has tapes, and the American public wants to know what he's talking about. So obviously, there has to be a trial. All right, there's going to be an investigation. All right, so let's look at the 5 guys. All the 5 plumbers are found guilty. There's no way to deny the fact that they did something that was illegal. They're caught red-handed. They're all found guilty. All right, and as people start to ask more questions, members of Nixon's own staff, and there's this rumor out there that the president's connected, his own staff start to resign. They don't want to be caught up in this thing or put under oath. And if you lie under oath, you got some serious federal jail time. So members of his own staff start to resign. All right. More journalists start picking it up. More stories are breaking. Journalists are doing the job. Washington Post, New York Times, they're talking about the payoffs, illegal activity. They're getting in contact with people who are kind of hushed by Nixon. So, and then it's really going to get big. The next thing you have to do in order to impeach a president is you have to look into the details itself. So the Senate committee goes together and they start to make an announcement. They'll be looking into the possibility of an investigation of the president into this activity. So an investigation is announced. All right, so here is the crazy one. This is similar to what happened with Donald Trump and Robert Mueller. So this one got cut off here, but it says the special prosecutor. So whenever something like this happens, you want to get someone who's going to look at all the details. Whenever a president could be potentially impeached, there's a special prosecutor. Mueller was the one with Donald Trump. William Starr was for Nixon, and this guy is named Archibald Cox. He is appointed special prosecutor by Nixon's own Justice Department to investigate what actually happened in Watergate. So he's looking into why were the Democrats their office broken into. So he's going to start piecing all the pieces together. So as he's sitting down with people and meeting them and interviewing them under oath, people start suggesting that Nixon has tapes, his own White House tapes. And the special prosecutor wants obviously to get his hands on these tapes to see what they're talking about. So people begin to ask Nixon for the secret tapes. Now, here's the questionable, what the legality that's interesting with this thing. These are Nixon's private tapes. Does he have to turn them over to this investigator? That's going to go to the Supreme Court. So Nixon will do everything possible to make sure that these tapes do not go to the special prosecutor because they might be incriminating. And the truth is, we just don't know even to this day. But I'll get to that. All right. So there are tapes out there, and the special prosecutor wants it. It's weird. All this is kind of full circle because with even Donald Trump here recently with his impeachment, Comey, who was the FBI director for a while, better hope there are no tapes of our conversations. So I mean, it's weird. Politicians are really worried about saying something or having it recorded. That's a weird story. All right. So let's talk about this one. So the investigation is honing more into Richard Nixon. And Nixon's got a few options, and it's called the Saturday Night Massacre. All right. So this is Nixon's response to the investigation that's really honing in on him. And he knows he's guilty. So what can you do? So Nixon refused to comply with a subpoena from the special prosecutor. A subpoena is you basically have to submit the documents and the evidence, and Nixon's not going to do it for obvious reasons. It might be self-incriminating. All right, so he's not going to do it. A day after that's issued, he's refusing the subpoena. Nixon makes a move, and he fires the guy investigating him, Archibald Cox. Okay, so Nixon fires the investigator who's investigating him. Yeah, that's what he does. All right. So in order to get him fired, he has the attorney general do it, and the attorney general doesn't want to do it. He looks bad, and the attorney general resigned. Nixon then asked the deputy attorney general to do it. That person didn't do it either. All right. They didn't do it. Eventually, they get person all the way down the line, and the individual under the attorney general fires the special prosecutor. Now, why does that look bad? The guy who's investigating you is just canned. That would be like the police department. Let's say you're under investigation and the people who are investigating you are just fired by you personally. I mean, you can't do that. You did. Nixon did, but it looks really bad. All right. So this is what historically people call the Saturday Night Massacre. This is when the person who was investigating Nixon was fired on Saturday night. And the press picks up on this. So it looks really bad for Nixon. He fires the guy investigating him. All right. So even right now, oh my word, Trump allegedly tried to get Rod Rosenstein, the attorney general, and the former attorney general, Jeff Sessions, to also fire Robert Mueller. And Mueller was investigating Trump. You can't make this stuff up. You just can't. All right. So now, to give Trump a lot of credit, he did not fire Mueller, but there's a lot of people advising him not to do so because it would look really bad, just like Nixon. All right. So yeah, that's pretty crazy stuff. So what Nixon starts to do, he gets very combative with the media because the media is starting to look into all the leads as well. So I'd show you the video, but Nixon is less than nice. I mean, he just blasts the news media in 1973. And I should say he wins the 72 election. So he becomes president, but as soon as he's the president in a second term, this is when this thing is just it's coming to full head. Like, it is just crazy, the political storm is surrounding him in his early days as the president in 73. So And then the Trump thing too. I mean, here it is. Right now, Trump attacks the media too for the different investigations about him as well. So Nixon and Trump, there's some weird parallels. All right. So Washington Post, there he is, same organization that took down Nixon. He's blasting the Washington Post. He's blasting CNN there. So some weird parallels. Put a cartoon. There's Nixon kind of viewed as Pinocchio as a giant liar. All right, and all of this leads back to the president. Yeah. So, in the end, there's no denying the fact that Nixon was caught red-handed, and he can't cover up the truth. Word gets out that people are going to turn and flip on the president and testify against him in front of the different committees. And that's when Nixon knows he's doomed. The writing's on the wall that he's the one who organized this break-in. All right. Now, those tapes go all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that the American public and the prosecutor had the right to listen to those tapes. Oh, which, by the way, the prosecutor is fired, a new one is put in place, and the House and the Senate will continue its investigation. So even though Nixon fired the special prosecutor, a new one's put forth, and there'll also be different investigations in the House and the Senate. All right. So when people actually got a hold of these tapes from Nixon, people have listened to them, and there is 18 minutes on the tapes that are just like this. Silence for 18 minutes, and all of a sudden the conversations start. People speculate that he may have been talking about the break-ins at that point. They think he ruined the tapes himself, but we'll just never know. All right. So Supreme Court ruled Nixon had to surrender tapes. All right. And that's when the House, I mean, it's over. The House began the impeachment process. It goes to the House, to the Senate. It's got to get majority ruling in the House, the majority ruling in the Senate. And it never even, they start drafting it, but Nixon knows the writings on the wall and he resigns. He does not want to go down as the first president to ever be impeached, formally impeached in the House and the Senate. Others have been before. If you think back to U.S. history, Andrew Johnson was impeached in the House, but he was in essence cleared in the Senate. Nixon doesn't want to be that guy, so he resigns. And then it's supposed to go to Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, but Spiro Agnew is also caught up in the scandal as well. So the vice president resigns, and then it goes to the Speaker of the House, and that just happened to be Michigan's own Gerald Ford, right? And that's how Ford becomes the president of the United States. And what really dooms Ford, sadly, is Nixon had done something illegal. If you and I had done it as well, ordered the break-in, we'd be prosecuted. But a presidential pardon by the new president, Ford, it basically wipes away Nixon's legal, unethical transaction. So he will not go to jail for it. And a lot of historians and people have said that really dooms Ford's presidency because a lot of people wanted Nixon thrown in jail and prosecuted, but Ford pardoned him. And we'll take a look at that later on about Ford. All right. So, yeah. One lesson you could take in your final exam is you'll see a theme. There's a lot of things happening at the middle of the 20th century where a lot of Americans are really have this pattern of mistrust in the U.S. government. There's this idea that people can't trust what's going on because of the lies. The Pentagon Papers, we'll get to that, about the Vietnam War, where the government lied about what happened in Vietnam. Watergate, you've got Nixon lying about what happened that leads to his resignation. Vietnam, the government was not exactly truthful what was going on. It took the press and guys like Walter Cronkite to tell the truth. The JFK assassination, people are distrustful of the report, the Warren Commission, and people are just a little skeptical starting in the mid 20th century about what their own government is telling them. Right? And with that, that's the end of Watergate. I think that's your last lesson for the week. Wish me luck building a massive playset today. Oh my God, wish me luck. All right. With that, have a great spring break. And because I'm in a good mood, no check-in quiz Friday. You do not have to do that. Just look over the lesson, enjoy your break, get a start on that, and I'll see you guys when I see you. All right. Bye.